The federal government recently announced a huge change to how our driver's licences are to be issued and how our details are going to be kept. Now, the Home Affairs Department will be running it, and it plans to take driver's licensing away from the states and the territories and have us all on this national computerised system. Now, obviously, all police departments will have immediate access to it, but what will it mean? Now, joining me now from Liberty Victoria, Jessie Taylor. Good evening.
Good evening.
Now, you're not in favour of this, is that right?
No, it will shock you to hear that Liberty Victoria is not fantastically in favour of a national database uploading everyone's personal information.
But if it's going into all your driver's licence material is going into your state government now, what will be the difference if it was on a national database?
Well, look, I think everybody accepts and understands that when you go and get your L plates and get your licence from Vic Roads, you are providing personal information, including your photograph and your address and things like that, to Vic Roads. But there's a big difference between that and this proposal, which is effectively, let's upload this information to a national database and do with it what? We don't know exactly what. We do know that the government has been talking about using it not only for government and policing purposes, but also with reference to private companies having access to that information. So it's a real concern.
That part of it I agree with you on, yeah, for private companies I agree. But and I must admit, years and years ago, when they were floating I think it was Neil Blewett was floating the idea of an Australia card, and I said, I'll be happy to be number 000001. Didn't worry me. But I have one thing why I sort of like this idea is because it would mean you just have your driver's licence number on the base, and because the thing that a lot of my friends, especially female friends, hate the idea of having your home address on your driver's licence, as does in Victoria, and some states don't. Because if you're, and I can see this happening. You're a young girl. You're a pretty young girl and you're in a nightclub. Some guy targets you there, managed to steal your handbag.
Yeah, they've got your keys, they've got your home address, they've got your ID. Yeah, I absolutely.
And he can be at your house before you get home.
So what you're talking about then is actually providing less information, making less information publicly available, making it harder for people to access personal identifying information. And I'm completely with you on that as well. The issue is here that there seems to be a presumption underpinning this that blanket surveillance, blanket facial recognition technology and artificial intelligence of that kind will actually make us safer. There's no empirical evidence to suggest that that sort of blanket surveillance has any positive safety impact. But what we can do by doing this is to create a real honeypot for anyone who wants to hack into vast quantities of information. We're putting it all in one spot and, heaven forbid that we suggest this, but sometimes governments are not the best at maintaining data security.
That is true.
Also, there's a suggestion that this should be used for data matching. And, data matching in this government's recent history has been an unmitigated disaster in the form of the robo-debt issues, which are playing out in court as we speak. So giving more information to more people, the identity of whom we do not know, and with no real guarantees about usage or security is deeply concerning.
The other point here too, I've been talking about the safety of, say, young women, but I have a friend recently who is in a car accident, not her fault, and the people who were in the other car drove away and she perhaps foolishly followed them and finally managed to get them to pull over. She did not want to give them her driver's licence info because there's almost a sense of road rage there, and thought, if I give them my home address, they could come around to my place at 10 o'clock at night and cause problems.
Yeah. Look, I agree. It's providing personal information and identifying information, particularly when that ID is the key to so many other things. It is a real worry, particularly when it is being stored online and in the cloud and all that kind of thing. There's another issue why this is really concerning to me, and that is that the accuracy of facial recognition technologies is really, really patchy, and it is particularly bad if you are a woman and particularly bad if you have dark-coloured skin. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology did some research last year about the accuracy of facial recognition technology and found that the error rate for women of colour was over 37%, whereas the error rate for white men is under 1%. So the way that this is, that this is calibrated doesn't seem to understand difference in faces that are dark-skinned. And that, of course, puts paid to the idea that if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. Because, if you say, I've got nothing to hide, I don't mind if I'm used, you know, if there's facial recognition used on me, if I'm identified as walking down Flinders Street on a Tuesday afternoon, it doesn't bother me. But the moment comes where something bad does happen and the bloke looks a bit like you,
and
you might be
you
singing from a very different songbook.
What's it for 37%, you said?
I think, let me revise that, I think it's 34.7% error rate in women of colour, and the darker the skin, the less accurate it is. Whereas in white men, the inaccuracy was an error rate of under 1%.
Well, and there's that crude thing, and I apologise in advance, you know, they all look the same to me sort of thing.
Well, it seems, I mean, there's a lot of interesting research being done around the way that artificial intelligence deals with faces of different ethnicities. And you know those silly hand dryers that you put your hands into like that? There are a number of brands of those hand dryers that won't work if the hands that are going into them have quite dark skin. They just don't see black skin. So it's really quite ridiculous. And we just need to make sure that we understand the fallibility of this technology and the fact that this technology affects different people in our community and, if I may be so bold to say, people in our community who already might be targeted by law enforcement more readily than others.
Well, the racial profiling, which we've seen happen in the United States.
Unfortunately, we can see, well, it's not only in the United States, but it's certainly a huge and a very, very fatal problem in the United States. But we do have those issues here as well, and we do need to make sure that when we are talking about implementing these technologies, they're not going to exacerbate racial inequality and racial profiling in our community.
Yes, fair point. All right, Jessie, thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.